Hello, farmers, and welcome to another episode of The Harvest Season. My name is Raschelle.
My name is Al.
And my name is Kevin.
And we're here to talk about a not farming game.
Woo!
Woo! But before we talk about a not farming game, first we're going to introduce Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Al, Raschelle, beautiful listeners that I can't see.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. For the listeners, my name is Kevin. I am a friend of Al and Raschelle from the Slack where we all hang out. I think a lot of our guests also come from.
Yeah.
And I am, I don't know. I'm an engineer. I work a lot. That is my main thing. Yeah. I play a lot of games. That's my main non-work activity. Primarily Nintendo games. I do play a handful of farming games every now and then. I played Stardew. I played a lot of the older ones. A Wonderful Life on the GameCube was my jam. And my gold standard for farming games, really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like Pokemon, I like Animal Crossing. I'm the walking Nintendo focus group, basically.
You fit right in here. And you're going to have so much fun talking to us about today's topic, which is Animal Crossing. Parentheses, Reprise, and parentheses. It's a musical. It's not a musical, but we're going to pretend it is.
Woo!
Woo! All right, so of course we're going to go through our usual format. We're going to do what we've been playing, we're going to hit some news, and then we're going to talk about Animal Crossing for 3 hours, and then Al is going to go to bed. How's that sound, everybody? All right, so what has everyone been playing recently?
Shall I start? Because mine will probably be reasonably quick.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I have been playing mostly Lonely Mountain Downhill.
No, I haven't heard about this at all. I haven't heard this name.
It is a very fun little game about mountain biking. And it's so you cycle down mountains and you try not to crash, and then you try and do it faster. And it's got really nice, simple-ish graphics, but it looks really good. And it's just really fun to play, and I like to cycle, but I don't like to do stupid things, and so this allows me to do the stupid things without dying. Yeah, and I think that's mostly what I've been playing, because I really got a couple weeks basically playing it non-stop. I played a little bit of Friends of Mineral Town, but I think I'm starting to peter out on that for just now, which is fine, but I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm like, kind of done everything I want to do here. Yeah, that's about me. Who's next?
Kevin.
All right, I'll take it. Okay, so the last 2 weeks I've been very, very busy with work, so I actually haven't had too much time for playing. I've dipped into the mobile world with Pokemon Go, which I didn't play previously, but after discovering they put up some of those stops near me, and there's that remote raid stuff, I kind of
You've
dipped
been sucked in.
I got some of that FOMO, that fear of missing out. So I played that. That's like I played at the very beginning, but I dropped off because my lifestyle was not conducive to that game. I played Pokemon Cafe Mix. It's a really fun puzzle on the mobile. It's on Switch too. I don't have much to add. I like puzzle games like Tetris and whatnot. But the one game I do want to briefly mention is one I fired up last night. It's called River City Girls. Have either of you two heard about this?
Mm-mm.
I think so.
Okay. So I'm not too familiar with the original game. I think it's called River City Ransom. It is a quote-unquote beat-em-up where you run around as a dude. The original, you run around as a dude or pair of dudes, and you beat up a whole bunch of guys as you go to different objectives. So that's definitely an older game, and this is like a sequel spin-off to that series called River City Girls, where the two from the original have been kidnapped, and now their girlfriends have to save them, which I think is like a reversion of the original plot. Some of this might be inaccurate. Like I said, I don't know the original too well, but it is a fun game. It was nice to vent out frustrations by beating up lots of stuff. And there's really, really good music. That's why I got sucked in. Actually, I heard a track from the game, and I said I needed to play this game. And it's pixel art, which I didn't expect. It's 2D sprites, pixel animation, which to the listeners who don't know me, I dabble in sprite art. So it fills me with glee when I see something nice with sprite art. Yeah, that's all I got. I've been busy for games.
Kevin undersells his pixel art. It's great. Very, very fun to look at your creations.
I mostly take Pokemon and cut them up and combine them. Sometimes the delightful things, sometimes the horrifying things. They're all beautiful children to me, but...
Horrifying, like my current avatar on the Slack, which is what was it? Zygardos? Would you call it? Zygardos. Yeah. It's a Zygarde Gyarados.
Oh, that's
comic.
good, Zygarde.
I love it.
Yep.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm personally a fan. I've been playing exactly 3 things recently, and listen closely because there's a surprise in there. First of all, I have been playing I finished recently, I guess I should say, a fantastic little game. It's a short little visual novel game called Butterfly Soup. Very cute. It's very good. It's very queer, so I guess if you don't like queer people, maybe don't play it. But also, then, why are you listening to this podcast? Yeah, I feel like we have a very set stance on this topic.
Little bit.
Are you sure? I haven't picked it up.
It's very, very
You're just
good.
trying to flush them all out, aren't you?
They always rear their heads eventually. Anyway, so it's very, very good. I actually think you can get it for free. It's fantastic. If you want to spend 3 to 5 hours seeing a really good little story about some good little characters. What else have I been playing? Zombies Run. Did that surprise you?
What? I am shocked. Shocked.
I have been playing so much Zombies Run. Partially because it is the only thing in a format which I have the time to play anymore. And partially because I'm obsessed with it deeply. I'm not going to rant about it this episode, actually. But I will say the third thing I've been playing is writing fan fiction. And let me tell you, this is not related to anything we've been playing, but yesterday, we're going to say the word yesterday as if time is real. I, yesterday, finished writing a chapter, and I'm actually very proud of it. It is a very good piece of writing, especially for a first draft. And I just want to say, I like writing things. I know that's not a game, but...
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of writing. Raschelle would know this. We have talked shop on writing.
Yes.
And analyzing writing.
Analyzing writing. So I had a friend read this chapter that I wrote, and she gave me a little bit of feedback, and then I kind of got really excited analyzing my own writing. So I'm one of those people. I'm just and then thematically, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm very proud of this fanfiction chapter I wrote. I think I did a good job. And anyway, so that's what I've been playing recently. Anyone want to talk about some news?
Yeah.
It was a Zombies Run fanfiction, by the way. So let's talk about some news.
Yeah, let's talk about some news.
First of all, you remember Garden Story?
I do remember Garden Story.
It's cute. It has a grape.
The Jumino Simulator?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, it's about a grape. And then I had to explain to Al that the name Concord is because Concord grapes are a thing. I remember that. Good times, good times.
Name is Concord?
Yeah.
That's so good.
I know,
right? So good.
I know. Can you believe Al didn't get that?
Oh, that's great.
Sorry,
Al. You might even say it's grape. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, I'm fine.
You tired, Raschelle? I wasn't that funny.
So tired.
Good.
I don't think you you understand? I literally didn't
This
sleep.
is the mindset.
Okay. Concord the Grape is coming to Nintendo Switch.
Woo.
That's exciting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just happy hearing anything's on the Switch.
It's another game I don't need to buy on PC. Whoop whoop.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. All right. On top of that, guess what? Harvest Moon Mad Dash is coming to Xbox One and Windows. We care about that, right?
Yay.
Sure.
2 systems I don't use.
And a game you don't really
either.
want to play.
It's beautiful.
As I said in the show notes, that's news, I guess.
Yep.
Perfect. Moving on. Have
Moving
you heard
on.
of a little game called Bear and Breakfast?
Yes.
I have. I'm excited for this game.
Neat. It's really cute. I like the little bear.
You run a bear. Using the pun. I'm using a bed and breakfast. I like business simulator games, like running a shop or something like that. That appeals to me. And the fact that you do it as a bear, I'm all about it.
It's great. It's cute. I love it.
His name is Hank.
Bear. I
All
like
right.
Bear. Also, their Twitter account is very fun. If you like good Twitter accounts, go follow them. It's very good.
Ah! Ah!
Oh, I love it so much.
I'm on a roll.
You are just nailing it today, Al. All right. Speaking of which, Al, how do you feel about Dragon Acres?
Oh, it's got dragons. Look, I mean, do you want a farming game, but also have
Acres
dragons?
of them.
Acres and acres of dragons.
I want dragons.
Wait, are you farming dragons or are you a
No.
dragon farming?
You don't farm dragons, but you get dragons and you farm. I'm sorry, were you thinking like
I just like
ooblets?
my alternatives better.
Were you thinking like ooblets, but instead of like little creatures, you just get massive fire-breathing dragons?
I mean, I'm down for that. That sounds rad. I'm a dragon rancher. There's a premise. I'm down for it.
I love it.
Is it that far off from Pokemon, where we breed hordes and hordes of dragons?
Well, I don't know. So you can breed the dragons. I'm just quickly reading through things. So you can breed them once you have some dragons. But
There you go.
They come from eggs, not plants.
Yeah,
September 2022.
So far.
really fun. That's a really announcement.
Yeah.
Oh, you say that now. Time's not real, so.
Yeah, and we've got too many games as it is, so.
I mean, just think of how many times I can replay the entirety of Zombies Run in that time.
I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
If you only listen straight through the audio and don't actually play the game properly, the seasons range somewhere in the 8 to 12 hours per season of audio.
You can tell that it was started by a British person. Joe.
I understood that reference.
Do you get it?
No.
Do I have to explain? So, British TV shows tend to have much shorter seasons than do US TV shows. So where a US TV show might have 20 episodes, a UK TV show might have 8 to 10.
But they're incredibly long.
What 8 to 10 episodes?
Hours per season of straight audio of clips that are 1.5 minutes to 3 minutes long.
Okay.
I mean, I listen to a podcast weekly that's on about 4 to 5 hours on average, so I could do it.
Sometimes I spend entire days replaying a season of Zombies Run. But we're not talking about Zombies Run today. We're talking about Animal Crossing.
Woo.
Woo!
New Horizons, to be specific.
Oh,
Woo.
okay. Okay. We're talking about Animal Crossing's New Horizons.
Woo.
Woo.
That also sums up our feelings in general.
Nailed it. All right. So,
I think saying that
Both
sums
of
up our
those.
feelings would imply that it's a lot simpler to explain our feelings than
Yeah, probably. We
Well,
like the things that we like, and we don't like the things
So,
that we don't like.
that was the abstract. Now let's get into the raw data. Oh, sorry. I just hit my elbow.
I was going to say, did you just die?
That's what happens when we talk about Animal Crossing.
I'm gonna die for this, and I don't even want to. Okay. I'm alive. Oh man, that hurt. Okay. So, Animal Crossing, where do we want to start?
Perhaps our context, like what we played, the history.
I think, do the listeners know by this point that I have played all of the Animal Crossing?
I don't know. I mean,
I do now.
I don't think it would be a surprising thing, and you
I have played
all
of the Animal Crossing. I started with Wild World, then I went back and played the GameCube game, and I've played every single game since then, including the Wii game. That's a Mario Party ripoff, and Happy Home Designer, which I am very fond of.
So I'm in a similar camp. I've played everyone, all those spin-offs included. I haven't played the phone game. I haven't played that one. But unlike Raschelle, I started at the very beginning with the original Animal Crossing on the GameCube, in the US at least. I was real young. I was in middle school, I think, when that thing came out.
Yeah, that was during my girly games makes you a not real gamer, so you're not allowed to play girly girl games phase, which is why I didn't play it.
Man, my GameCube era was nice because I would go to the Blockbuster and rent random games that just looked appealing.
Remember Blockbuster?
No.
I got my Animal Crossing from a Blockbuster. Well, I mean, the first time I played it.
Remember Blockbuster. Al, what's your history with Animal Crossing? As if the listeners don't know this because they didn't hear it happen in real time.
For those who haven't, I played about 10 minutes of New Leaf, and then about 10 minutes of, what's the phone one?
Pocket Camp.
That one. And then I played about 200 hours of New Horizons. So that's about it in a nutshell.
Oh, I should add for context, I played hundreds of hours in each entry.
In every single game. Same.
So yeah, there we go. That's how we're coming into this one.
Poor Al.
A classic harvest season setup with the people who know everything telling Al about it, because he doesn't.
And then arguing about it.
Yes, I love it. Perfect.
Arguing. I love the arguing.
I am so tired. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Animal Crossing New Horizons. This is not a brand new game. I don't think this is even the first time we've ever talked about this game. But
it's our follow-up.
But it has been a while, and there's been a lot of updates, and I kind of felt like I'd had some time to sit with this game, and I had a lot of feelings about it. And I mean, I have feelings about everything because I'm a feelings person. But I had, in particular, an abnormally large amount of feelings about this, so I thought, let's do a follow-up episode. Now that it's been some time, and there's been some updates, and we've had some time to, let it stew in a crock pot for a while and really get those juices mixing. So let's talk about this game. Is there any place anyone wants to start?
Perhaps an overall opinion, or do you want to do that at the end?
No, okay. Let's start with overall opinions. You know, we've all played it for quite a lot now, quite a lot more than when we did our first episode. Yeah. Do you like the game?
Yes. So for me, I would say New Horizons is that's not like a 10 out of 10 game. I love it. I'm still actively playing it every day. I have put hundreds of hours in it. But for context, the predecessor, New Leaf on the 3DS, I'd call that like a 15 out of 10 game.
Oh.
Yeah, so I enjoy it. It's Animal Crossing. It's good. A lot of it was executed well. But the overall, there's a change in direction with what the game was trying to accomplish. And that direction just didn't sit well. I didn't enjoy that for me personally. I know it appealed to a lot of people, but it wasn't what I wanted out of the game. And even acknowledging that, I think that this game has a lot of issues with its execution, a lot of its resources, balancing, for lack of a better word, of the gameplay loop and whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot to say about all this.
Raschelle, how do you feel about it?
So I feel like my feelings have changed over time. Not necessarily in a bad way, right? But
I mean, well, that's why we're doing a follow-up episode.
Yeah.
but I think that I both like and don't like this game. In that I think I like it, and I mean, obviously, I put more time into this game than I think most games that I've ever played.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I like it for the same reason as either of you two like, or as why it was created. And when you actually boil it down to how you realistically have to play it after your first, couple of months playing it, after your first couple of 100 hours playing it, you realistically have to transition to the the way that we've talked about. You're playing it for a wee bit every day, sort of thing. That I don't think I like that. I don't think I'll ever like that sort of play, and therefore, maybe I don't actually like this game.
So what I'm getting is Kevin has mixed feelings. Al has mixed feelings.
Raschelle, do you like this
game?
Would
Would you maybe have mixed feelings?
I don't know if the listeners know this about me.
Bing, drinking game. Take a drink.
But I often do this thing where I differentiate between the way I feel intellectually and the way I feel emotionally about things, because you can feel different ways at the same time about things.
Imagine that.
Intellectually, how do I phrase this?
You don't like it?
I understand and respect a lot of aspects of this. This is the first Animal Crossing game I have entirely put down.
Oh.
I actually would venture to say I don't really enjoy playing this game.
Oh.
Just straight up. Like, not mixed feelings, just straight up. So,
I thought I was going to be the harsh one. Ooh.
Oh, my word.
So, yeah, I mean, part of it is that my life has been very busy, but I actually have not played this game, I would venture to say, in about a month and a half. And I'm sure I would love to talk about that. Do you want to... Here's what we can do. Since we have mixed feelings, and there's kind of two ways we can go about this. I don't know how you guys want to do it. We can either kind of go bullet point by bullet point. We can either do like, here's the things we like, and then here's the things we don't like, and kind of like do an open platform kind of thing. Or do you want to go bullet point by bullet point and say, here's what we don't like, and here's what we do like about this aspect, and then this aspect, and then this aspect? Do those options make sense?
Yeah. Let's do the good and the bad. Let's do...
I mean, we could just like talk about the things as they come up, right? Like, no?
Okay. Open platform, good and bad.
I'll make the first point.
Yes.
Are
we starting with goods or bads?
Well, I
Mixed.
guess
Go.
Bad mixed. Okay, so the first thing I want to mention is the context of Animal Crossing, because this is really important for my frame of mind.
I was gonna say, I think this will have a lot to do with why I feel the way I feel.
Okay, so a little history lesson here. Katsuya Iguchi was the creator/director of the original Animal Crossing, and this came about because he moved for his new job at Nintendo. And let's see here, to use a quote, Animal Crossing features 3 themes: family, friendship, and community. But the reason I wanted to investigate them was a result of being so lonely when I arrived in Kyoto. When I moved, I left my family and friends behind. In doing so, I realized that being close to them, talk to them, play with them, was such a great important thing. And that was the impetus behind the original Animal Crossing. And I think that is very accurate and true to the original Animal Crossing and the majority of the games. That was the direction, what they wanted to do. It wasn't just a town builder or town simulator. It was like a quote-unquote life simulator, if you will. And my memories of the original Animal Crossing and most of the other entries are in line with that, where interactions with the villagers and my experiences and memories in each of those villages. And I just feel like New Horizons didn't capture that as well. New Horizons felt more like building a town builder, where you quite literally shaping your island however you would like it to look like, and it's nice and pretty and it's great, but it doesn't have that feeling of being lived in like the other ones did. So, yeah, go ahead. Thoughts?
Interestingly, I think that's where we get into the interesting part where why you don't like this game, or why you like this game. Why you like this game less than previous ones is actually why I like it.
Because I'm the character person and you're the mechanics person.
Yeah, exactly. Like I like this game because I want a game where I can mold the world, and like the idea of like a game where it's focused around, you know, this community, and so I don't really care about that, you know, and not in a way to be harsh, right? But I get you. Yeah. It's just one of these things where I find. Do you remember? Do either of you remember in the Littlewood episode? Must be a year ago now.
30 years ago, yes.
We talked about how in that game, at that point in time, it's now been changed. When you talked to people, that used up your energy.
And I love that because as a person with depression, I felt very seen for a moment there.
I thought that was a really good way of doing things as well, because you're like, actually, you know, talking to people can be exhausting. And I find it the same talking to people in game as I do in real life. It's sometimes just exhausting, and I really don't want to do that in my games, you know? And so I'll do the same sort of thing in most games where I'm like, okay, fine, we're talking. Sometimes I pay attention, sometimes I just skip through and I'll deal with the consequences later, right? And so actually a game built around that, it's not something I want to do.
I will say, this isn't... I don't want to make it sound like this is my only issue with this game, because it's definitely not.
Oh, no.
Well,
like, I'm agreeing with you.
What it is I think... So what Kevin was kind of saying about how there's been this sort of shift in direction in the focus of the game. From essentially something Kevin was more interested in into something that Al is more interested in.
That's how they thought about it as well. That's exactly how they went with the design process.
Yes, they're like, okay.
Not something not that Kevin would want, but something that Al would want.
And like the poor intern was like, "Who's Kevin?" And everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, get on the program!" Like, yes, but it's not. I think it would be an oversimplification to say that my feelings are about this kind of boiled down to the shift in direction, because I enjoy both of those types of games. I really like social sims. I'm obviously very much a character person. If I wasn't a character person, I wouldn't be entirely into Zombies Run, which is 100% entirely based in character. I also like to just do things a lot. It's a lot of like, there is a part of my brain that really just doesn't give a poop about who has to say what. Just let me solve a Picross puzzle. You know what I mean? Like, I enjoy both of those things. And I think part of the issue is the expectation of the history of the series. Because when you get an Animal Crossing game, you're expecting it to be like previous Animal Crossing games. And the fact that this is such a wide... How do I word this? See, this is the problem with when I'm tired, because I want to use smart person words and then I don't remember the smart person words.
Well, I can give you an assist here, because I for context, I'm of the same mindset where I enjoy plenty of town building, quote unquote, type games, like Minecraft, where I just build whatever, or Dragon Quest Builders 2, a fantastic game of that nature where you can just build whatever. But so, like, I have no problem with that, and people enjoy that from this Animal Crossing. That's fine. Like Al, that's perfectly fine. Just as Raschelle was saying, it's a perception thing, which is so important in game design. The expectation set. Go ahead.
It's about, there is a huge discrepancy between the expectation from this game and the reality of this game. Not to say that either is necessarily bad, but it's partially just the fact that it wasn't what was expected. But I think also, I want to make clear that, like, that's not my only issue, because a lot of my issues actually sort of spawn from, it's not just that there's a discrepancy between the expectation and the reality. It's the ripple effects of what made that happen. So like a lot of the actual like mechanical changes that were made, that kind of made that shift from more social sim into more town builder. Those are the things that I don't like. And those are the things that make me want to put the game down. It's not necessarily that it's changed direction. It's the way in which it has changed direction and the consequences of the way in which it has changed direction that have made me significantly less interested in this game than in previous games. So, which is kind of a complicated thing. There's not really a good way to talk about it without talking about a lot of small, detailed, specific things in there.
Well, let's try hitting some of those, maybe, to clarify. Like, let's talk about DIYs, which is central to this game, and I think exemplary of a lot of the issues we have. I guess, go ahead.
I was going to say, no, that's actually a really good example, because there's sort of themes in the way I feel about this game and the way things happen. And I think DIYs hits very nicely into this theme of the way that the social interaction has been flattened in favor of more transactional mechanics. So in previous games, like, okay, as a general rule, I actually really like the crafting play-wise. Like, mechanically, I enjoy collecting resources. I enjoy hoarding resources. I enjoy occasionally using my hoard of resources. Like, and I don't mind. Too. I don't, like, I'm a crafting person. Like, I really enjoyed my time at Portia, and that was just crafting the game. So, in that way, like, this is perfectly exemplary of exactly how I feel about this game, because I should like this in theory, because I really enjoy crafting. But then what they've done in sort of like the way you collect DIYs and getting different DIYs from different villagers of different types and from different events and things like that has sort of simultaneously, on the one hand, it has like an issue with the in-game social interaction, because the villagers, setting aside everything else about villagers, which I have a lot of opinions about, but the villagers then become essentially DIY recipe farms. And because different DIYs are tied to different villager personality types, it sort of inherently prompts the player into swapping out villagers regularly. Which I know you can get from other people as well, but just hold on a second. Like, pretend for a minute you don't have a lot of friends and no one plays Animal Crossing. I know that's unrealistic because everyone plays Animal Crossing now, but if you were just playing by yourself, the only way for you to get DIYs from different villagers of different personalities would be to kick one out and hope you get a new one with a different personality. And so in the process of making it sort of like a fun, varied task you can do, it cheapens the in-game social interaction and flattens it and one-dimensionalizes it so that the villagers are no longer people, they're DIY farms. And then on like the player-to-player social interaction, I'd like in principle the idea of having duplicate DIYs. So a villager can teach you a DIY that you already know multiple times, and you can just keep getting copies from them. And I think they sort of intended it to be partially if you had multiple accounts on the same Switch playing the same game, so that if one person has the DIY, the second and third and fourth player on the island can also get that DIY. And partially, I think it was intended to encourage interaction between people with different games, to say, I mean, you see this happen all the time in the Animal Crossing community. Hey, I've got a bunch of extra DIYs. Who wants to come look through this? Who wants me to mail them something, you know? And I think that was sort of like part of the intention in that design feature. But what it ends up doing is making that particular social interaction less about, hey, let's go visit each other and admire our towns, and more, hey, I'm going to mail you a thing. And it kind of makes the potential for player-to-player social interaction more transactional and more of a money kind of way. That's not quite the way I want to phrase that.
Commodization?
Commodification, yes, thank you. It sort of makes the interaction one of commodification rather than social.
The game is done in a lot of areas.
Yes, I think my main complaints about this game could essentially be boiled down to why are we dehumanizing everything in favor of capitalism? So
I was going to ask Al, do you have any thoughts on DIYs, the DIY system, before I jump in?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, right? Because I find it a little bit odd. Things are tied so much to like personalities, because I feel like then they've kind of gone into this situation where it's not an individual that that gives you things. It's a bank that is essentially like, these 20 will give you these DIYs, right? And it kind of removes that individualism from them. Now, personally, I don't care about that, but I definitely understand why people would care about that. And it's certainly something that because obviously, sure, we're going to talk about their what's the word, dialogue, and the lack of it, and that all kind of hints to the same thing, right? It's not 200 villagers, right? It's 10. And they just look slightly different.
Yep.
Yeah. And I will say, it's not like this is new to the series. I actually think it's good to compare and contrast this with, in New Leaf, there was the concept of public works projects, which were things you could build to design in your town. They were just like everything from like, do you want a fire hydrant? Do you want a fancy garden statue? Do you want like a wisteria trellis, my favorite item in the whole game? Things like that. And those were also tied to villager personalities. But I think the difference between the two that makes me more okay with public works projects and less okay with the way the DIYs are set up is that with the public works projects, there's always going to be someone who is like the hardcore collector who's going to cycle through everything, right? So there were people in New Leaf who would cycle through villager personalities to make sure they unlocked every single public works project. But if you didn't do that, just the average player, this created a sort of diversity in between different villages, because if Kevin had X and Y personality types and I had Y and Z personality types, inherently the design of our town, to the extent to which we could design our towns, would be a little bit different, because Kevin would have different public works projects available than I would. And while we may have some overlap, we'd also have some differences, and it made everything feel a little bit more unique and special. But with the way the DIYs are, because they're also partially set up in that sort of social, parasocial, primarily transactional swapping of DIYs between people, there's built into the design of it is an incentive to trade and interact with other people, which inherently leads to collecting one of everything. So this weird process of kind of tying things to groups of villagers, whereas what am I trying to word this as? I can't even word me questioning my wording, right? Wow. It's sort of, whereas it felt more a tool of diversification between the different game save files in New Leaf with the public works projects, it feels more like they tried to do something and ended up flattening everything else for no reason. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'd actually like to add something to that. I get what you're saying, and I think another important part, and you can see it from comparing the public works projects to DIYs, is the emphasis. So in New Leaf, public works projects were big projects that would take a while to do, and you kind of passive in the background, really. You really didn't do much with them. But
if I may note real quick, think of, for people who have not played New Leaf, the public works projects are roughly equivalent to building inclines or bridges in New Horizons. So they're these big things, they're static, they just exist in the world to look nice, and they cost a lot of money, so they're a long-term goal.
Yes, and there's a relatively small list of them. And then look at New Horizons, DIYs are front and center, the core, the lifeblood of the game. Everything you do, whether you shake a tree, there's a resource to craft a DIY. one of your villagers on almost any given time is going to give out a DIY. There is a DIY you can get from the beach every day. Balloons can give you DIYs, and then you look at what are the DIYs themselves. The majority of them are, furniture and stuff you're placing, which is the lifeblood of any Animal Crossing game, really, or a lot of it, especially in this one. So you are very driven to get them, and just I lost my train of thought.
Which is this kind of gets into something I'm just going to make a side note, and then we can return to DIYs, because I know that a lot of people talk about how, oh, well, you're just playing the game wrong, or, oh, well, it's because of the pandemic and everybody just has more time or whatever. But I don't think that's true. Like, when I say, like, the issues I have with this game kind of stem from the unintended consequences of the changes they made to make this change in primary direction of the series, is that this is, exactly to Kevin's point, kind of the way it has been intentionally designed, because they have intentionally decided to make the DIY crafting a core focus of the game. And then the unintended consequence of that is that it cheapens and flattens other aspects of the game.
Yeah.
And, like, that is the summary of everything. So, like, some people may be saying, oh, well, people are just obsessed with collecting things because they have more time because of the pandemic. And really what it is that it is the way the game is designed.
Yeah, absolutely. To jump off from DIYs to another topic, one issue I have with DIYs is that I notice I collect them, but I craft relatively few of them. And this is tied to one of my issues in the game, which is the catalog selection, the direction they went with that. So I don't craft many DIYs because I just can't quite find. I like a lot of them. I look at the cards like, oh, that's a nice decoration or piece of furniture, but I can't quite find where I want to put it. And I find that issue with a lot of the items in Animal Crossing, which is a very core part of any Animal Crossing, the catalog. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the past games, New Leaf, the games had furniture sets, more or less. That was their focus. You could get, like, let's say my favorite set was the Robo set, where all your couches and beds and tables look like little robots with little cute robot eyes. Or you could have an ice set, everything made out of ice, or a mushroom set or whatever. And then there were more conventional things like the classic series, modern series, just basic designs in certain styles and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And then in this game, they changed direction on that angle as well, where they cut down the number of styles and sets and instead focused on variants.
Created this false diversity within the catalog of there's just thousands and thousands of items, and there's so much for you to collect, and it's this big thing because it's folding into this play emphasis of collecting things and filling out your catalog, whether that catalog is DIY recipes or things for your museum or the literal catalog. But it's not actually as diverse as it seems. There's not thousands of things. There's like 15 different colors of a couple different things. And that's actually a big criticism I had as well. Which kind of very much like, that's another just sort of like fundamental way that the game is designed that I don't really like, that has come about because as essentially an unintended consequence of the way they've changed things, because you see this in a lot of aspects of the game. Like the catalog has been flattened into this and has this sense of like false diversity to it. And the same goes with the villagers who have been flattened. And so there's this sort of false sense of diversity to them. And I don't think any of it was intentional. And I would love to see like them add more to the catalog to bring back a lot of like different sets. But
in their defense, I think they are at least trying to do that. Mm-hmm. The updates that came out, the Easter one, the summer stuff, they are much more colorful, more fun sets. I imagine when fall comes, we'll get the mushroom set. We'll probably get an ice set or a snowman set.
You do.
Winter. Yeah.
And I will say, like, it is something to be noted that very weirdly, even if you take out like the seasonal item sets, which have been relatively consistent for a lot of Animal Crossing games, just the base sets themselves, I think what you've kind of ended up with is like a lot of like the sets you can just buy at the store or whatever are the simpler, the more basic patterns and things like that. And they've kind of taken out a lot of the more whimsical ones, which I think is weird for a very whimsical game.
Yep. There's a lava floor, and I don't know what on earth I would do with that.
Just put a bunch of rocks in it.
The floor is lava.
The floor. Am I going to make the sushi restaurant room with the lava floor?
Yeah, it's perfect. You kind of see this like, I think a lot of people might not necessarily be like, consciously thinking about this, but you see this in things like, do you remember when everyone was complaining because there were no good tables to use as a kitchen counter?
Yeah.
That's because there isn't actually a diversity of items that can match and mix and match and kind of sort of go together with other things. It's just that there's so few different types of furniture. It doesn't matter if you can paint it 15 different colors because there's only 8 different styles.
Yeah.
So,
out of curiosity, Al, do you know what your house in Animal Crossing looks like? One of your room setups?
I have a living room as the main room, and there's like a sofa and a TV and brown stuff in there. And then downstairs is about the only room I actually properly designed. Like I made it a kind of office type, sciencey type room. And then I got bored designing things in my house, and so the kitchen has like a kitchen utility thing, and the bedroom has a bed. And oh no, I do have one more room, which is like I literally just threw up all of the egg-based stuff into it. Went there. That's a room.
Okay, Raschelle.
As I would call that, the seasonal items room.
Yep. Raschelle, what did your house look like? Out of curiosity.
Okay, so I don't know if you know this about me. I'm really into the house designing aspect of it, which is why I think it's weird that like I don't like this game mechanically, because like I'm not just all villagers. Like I played Happy Home Designer, and that was basically just house designing the game. I say basically as it literally was house designing the game. So I'm trying to open my game and it's not working, which is fine. I'll just do it from memory. My house, I know very intentionally, does not have a consistent theme, because I was having trouble putting items together. So I just kind of made rooms based on items I had. So I have sort of like an entrance study room with a hearth, which is one of my favorite items in the series. That's like the fire in the ground. It's a really good one. So I got that and was excited. So I made an entire room based around that. It's all the same shade of light pink, because that's the color you can paint everything. And I just kind of tend to stick miscellaneous things on the wall that are related to achievements in that room. So like when I get like trophies for doing the bug off or whatever, I'll stick them in that room. I have a back room that is entirely made out of the wooden block set in pastel, because I happened to like that set a lot. That is a little bedroom / I try to make it creepy, because I like things that are at the intersection of cute and creepy, where I put all of the posters of all my favorite NPCs on the walls. I have a bathroom that mostly kind of sort of matches maybe. That's kind of wood and green themed. I have the classic seasonal room. Upstairs, I vaguely attempted to make a kitchen. It doesn't look terribly kitchen-y because I don't have counters, but it is what it is. And then downstairs, I made a quote-unquote office where I just kind of put things that I liked. So
I'm bringing this up because my house, the main entrance is a living room. The main room is like a living room area. I have some arcade machines and stuff like that. Lounge, living room area. The back room, I have a kitchen. One of my side rooms is a bathroom. The other side room is a seasonal item room. Currently, it's a pirate room. I like very, very much. The upstairs is a bedroom / office. Half it is my bedroom, half it is an office. Downstairs is actually a workout area. That was kind of fun to make. But anyways, the point I asked all this is because if you'll notice, we all had
a theme.
Yeah, we all had an office, a living room area, a kitchen, bathroom, etc. Which I think, and it's not just us. If you visit any house, while everyone has their own spin on it, a lot those common themes are frequently seen, I think, in everyone's home. My brother Calvin, who also plays, he actually has the wood block set like you do.
It's cute.
Yep. So I think I've asked this because to tie it back. I think it speaks to the lack of diversity in this game in terms of the catalog. Because if you looked at again compared to New Leaf, where you could easily see a ton of people's houses, there was a whole section for that. Everyone's house was just radically different and very creative, I think. And you can certainly still be creative in how you do it in this one, but it's not as easy, though. It doesn't go as far and wide as Crazy.
Al, do you have anything left to say about the catalog before I transition us?
Just a small thing, in that I do like the different color options. Not trying to suggest that the two of you don't. I definitely get what you're saying, but I'm really glad they have the different color options. So, for example, the one of the things I really loved was the play gym in the catalog. That was such a nice thing to get, especially in one of the different colors, because we basically have one of those in our garden for my kids to play on. And being able to get one that was in almost identical colors was really nice. And yeah, so it's really nice having the different colors. But yeah, you could definitely do that in a better way than just having like different people being able to get different ones. But yeah.
And they did do that before, because in New Leaf they had that. They had not. I don't think it wasn't like every single item like in New Horizons, but there was a variety of items that you could customize to different colors.
Customizing was a whole thing.
Yep.
Which is why I think it's interesting, because I'm glad they kept the customization, but it's weird to me that they would keep half of the system and not keep the other half of the system. I'm sure it had to do with them
really
just
weird.
Not having time to make it, because the catalog is essentially all the diversity from the customized system from New Leaf without all the diversity from the base set catalog system, which is weird. But to transition, I have to call it out, otherwise it will be a good transition, and that's not allowed on this podcast. This is sort of, I think, another unintended consequence of the way that they've shifted focus. So I kind of want to talk about the shift in focus, the shift in the balance of power between the player and the rest of the game, because there's a very, very clear distinction between the item catalog and, say, the clothing catalog in this game, where there are a ton, like there's different colors and different variety within a single item type. So you can get the same shirt, for example, in 3 or 5 or 8 different colors. But it feels to me like there's more diversity in like the style and the aspect of the clothing than there is in the actual furniture. And I think that has a lot to do with
absolutely
an intentional design on putting a heavier emphasis on the player being able to customize themselves and customize the experience to themselves in particular. So it doesn't matter if everybody's house is the same, at least everybody looks different, as opposed to everybody kind of being able to have a balance between those two. And go ahead.
So here's a question for you. I think it's pretty clear that that's the case. Like, it's gone more towards the player molding the world around them rather than, as you mentioned, Kevin, moving into a place and gaining relationships and figuring out what the time. Do you think that's part of the reason it has become more successful?
I think that might be impossible to answer, given the conditions where it was released.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, if you look at the numbers, though, they're insane numbers, right? Like it's more than 4 times the second best selling game, and it's going to go up because we've not even hit the first holiday season since it's been released. Right? So absolutely insane numbers. Yep. That can't be purely down to, we were all stuck in our houses for a few months.
Well,
so here's the thing, is that I think it's probably a little bit of everything in a way where, to the extent where trying to argue about was it this or was it that is probably kind of missing the point, because this is also just a new fancy game on a newer system. And something to consider is that there was a really, really long time gap in between New Leaf and New Horizons. Like, Animal Crossing New Leaf is actually a very old game. And I kind of have the general feeling, and this is based on nothing, so this is just wild speculation. Gaming in general is kind of slowly getting more popular as time goes by, and slowly becoming a more accepted, fun thing that more and more people do. So part of it is also that more people just gonna play the games, you know what I mean? Like, it's not as much of a niche interest as it used to be. And then it's also the pandemic. And then it's also that this is a different game than it was before. It's also, I'm not saying that you're wrong, because I think that does have hard to do with it, because there are a lot of people.
Certainly.
And the reason I bring up more people being into games is because I feel like the more people get into games, the more you kind of notice this trend of wanting to play as more as yourself and less as a character. Not that that hasn't always kind of been a thing, but I feel like that has become a more and more popular viewpoint amongst the consumers of games. So you see more and more games going so heavily into like character customization, of making yourself rather than making a distinct character.
I think that would be a misrepresentation in my view. So I think there's a couple of things to point out here. One, I think that playing as yourself or as a character that you can project yourself onto, I think has always been the more popular.
Has it? Maybe I just have a weird taste in games, because I actually tend to not prefer that.
That's totally
it might just
fair.
Be a bias
but
I
think I would struggle to talk about a really popular, like one of the best, most top-selling games that is you're playing to learn this character's story. Like, I don't think they're very popular in general. Can you think of like a really popular, like on the level of, you know, Pokemon or something like that? That's actually you're going through a story.
Breath of the Wild something like pretty big.
But this is the thing, right? There's a story in Breath of the Wild, but Link is not
Spider-Man
a character in and of himself. Link is
Spider-Man.
the epitome.
I was going to say something.
Spider-Man's
something kind of like The Last of Us, maybe.
Yeah, but I don't think The Last of Us specifically, I think, would probably be one of the most popular of that sort of genre. But even still, its sales numbers are good, but not on the level of other games, I think. And I think that Breath of the Wild is a perfect example of where that's not the case. There is a story you're learning, but the whole point is he's a character that you are putting yourself onto. That he was designed like that. That's the entire purpose of Link. So I feel like
I disagree. This is a whole conversation.
Okay,
we'll have to
so we are getting
elsewhere.
severely we are severely.
Well, okay. Let me explain why. Let me explain why I brought this up. Okay, because I think that. And obviously, I think you're definitely right in that the real answer to why this game is so popular is a combination of all these things. But I suspect that they're never going to go back to what you like in Animal Crossing, because I don't think it will sell as well in the future.
And I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it will sell as well is the primary thing. Does that make sense? Like, because this isn't about all of a sudden you could have more character customization and then all of a sudden it became more popular. This has been, and I think this is part of the reason, like, I think part of this perspective difference might be because of our histories with the game, because this has been a slow and gradual process basically since the first game. This is not new. This is the largest leap they've taken in a single game, but this process of the shifting of focus has been happening the entire time. Like, absolutely. It's not noteworthy because it happened at all. It's noteworthy because it happened significantly more than the difference between previous installation gaps. Does that make sense?
Well, so that's something I guess that I've not seen, because this is the first one I've properly played. Do you have an example?
I'll take it on this one.
I was going to say, I can link you to a few hours long videos.
I think it'd be useful to get an example.
Okay. So let's go back to the original Animal Crossing. And
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, we can probably hit two birds with one stone here, and let's talk
Don't be
about
hitting
villagers.
birds with stones. That's not good.
About villagers, that's good.
Don't give me this.
Why are you hitting birds?
But you don't even know.
We
birds.
here at the harvest season endorse hitting birds.
No,
we don't.
Unless they're really annoying in Animal Crossing and you want to get rid of them, you can hit them with your net.
Hey, Animal Crossing had an entry where you would use your slingshot to hit birds.
Right.
That was absolutely
Raschelle, continue.
But like I think the development of villagers over the life of the series is really, really exemplary of kind of like this slow process of things changing. Because in the original game, the villagers had very distinctive, very vibrant personalities. They specifically, I think one thing to note is that a lot of them were really angry and cranky. So like if you'll notice now that Cranky is a villager type, and it's just kind of another bland, boring villager type because they are all the same now and they all blend together. A cranky villager in the original game was legit angry and cranky. Like they were jerks. They would not be nice to the player. Like there was in the sort of social interaction system, like you could make people angry at you, and it wasn't just like I'm hitting them with a bug net. It was like you could talk to them too much and they'd get annoyed, or you can talk to them too little and they'd get annoyed, or you can forget to do something and they'd get annoyed, or you could put a typo in your letter to them and they would get annoyed. Like they felt more three-dimensional because the personalities were more distinct and because they had a wider variety of ways to interact with them based on your previous history with them. So like if you decided that you actually were going to befriend this cranky, mean villager, if it was the last thing you do, eventually they kind of warmed up to you. And they were never entirely very super sweet or nice, but they stopped kind of being jerks. And there was this whole process, and they felt more like distinctive people. And over this series with every single game, I will say, I personally think the ultimate villager system was in Wild World, because they did tone down the crankiness and the angriness a little bit, but they still had cranky and angry villagers, and they had this really cool thing where like villagers would cycle through hobbies, and hobbies in hobbies in New Horizon are just cute little activities they do. It's the ones who either, like the hobbies are this villager sings a song versus this villager runs around like Naruto. The hobby system in Wild World was your villagers would cycle through different hobbies. So one villager might be obsessed with collecting fossils and they'd constantly ask you to give them fossils. And one might be really into flowers and they'd be planting flowers all the time. And there were multiple layers built into the system of both of friendship that built up the villagers to have distinct, unique personalities, even between the same villager in different games. So like I may have Coco in one game, and she could be really, really into collecting fossils, which would be thematically appropriate. But Coco in Kevin's town might be really into planting flowers. And so it would make it feel like there's a greater diversity even within the same character in different games, and they had more of a personality to them. And then that got taken away, and then the characters got toned down, probably around the same time that Rossetti got toned down because he made kids cry. Sorry, my personal opinion is kids can cry over time traveling. I don't care. I am a mean person. I like having bad luck, and I like tools being destroyed in every game that I play. I know I'm a cranky old jerk. But there's this sort of like, and then in the next, you get to City Folk, and then you get to New Leaf, and with every new installment, the characters were toned down, the personalities were the edges were shaved off, and they became flatter, simpler, and as they became flatter and simpler, all the different personalities started to kind of blend in together and kind of seem more similar to the different personality types. And when they took away things like the hobby system, there wasn't something to distinguish them either from the same villager in different towns and also from each other within the town. And then eventually you kind of get to New Horizons, where all the villagers just feel the same. The dialogue and personality distinctions between them are cosmetic at best, the same way that the diversity in the catalog is cosmetic at best. And it's taken this entire system that used to be the fundamental thing of the game and turned it into, this is another way for the player to have control and aesthetically decorate their town, as opposed to, this is a way for you to interact with other villagers. And those are two different things, and I like those two different things in different games at different times, but it has gotten to the point where it doesn't feel like an Animal Crossing game anymore, and that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Did that make sense? Was that kind of like a good overview of...
That was a very good example.
Yeah. And to go back to the previous point, which ties into that of player, if this is what the general public wants, players having more agency. What was my point I was going to make here? I think it's important to note the agency the players had over the villagers directly, because Raschelle very well described the personality changes and how it's flattened to appeal to people, because they were too intense at the beginning. But I'm in the same mindset. I like those intense personalities. They don't even show other emotions in this one. You don't see villagers get mad or sad. It's crazy. But even aside from that, just the actual capabilities the villagers had are non-existent in this game. You pick where every character lives. You can decorate their house and their outfits pretty much however you'd like, for the most part. Whereas in previous entries, you could try to do, like in the original Animal Crossing, it was very difficult. I don't even remember if you could change their houses at all. If you would gift them items and they put them in, they might.
You could gift them stuff, but oh heck, was the rate of them putting in their house real low.
Yeah, that's what I remember. And with each new entry in the game, that rate increased. I think in New Horizons, it's like almost guaranteed. You can put it in. And now you can decorate the outside of their houses to see what it looks like. You can place it wherever you like, etc. And previously that's why a big part of why they felt like characters, because they made decisions on that, where they wanted to live, what they wanted their house to look like, etc.
I mean, if you don't give them anything, then they get to choose what the inside of their house looks like.
Well, here's the thing. I am going to address this from the angle of another very particular issue I have with this game, which actually has to do a lot with why I would say I don't like it, as opposed to why I would be neutral towards it. And I know this is gonna sound like me being a little too intense about something, but hear me out.
Raschelle, intense, never.
Hear me out.
Unprecedented.
I know that we play video games to escape the world, but the older I get, the more I care about the sort of ethical implications of the things that people are being taught through video games while they're trying to escape the world. And with the villagers in particular, the flattening them has... The way the game is designed and the way it flattens them is that, in this example in particular, you are supposed to be encouraged to interact with and develop friendships with the villagers. And part of that process is, like, I would say even the fact that they're flat and dumb and boring now, like, there is an encouragement to interact with them. Like, it's a daily task that you do. They give you tasks in the Nook Mile system all the time. Talk to villagers. Villagers will ping you and give you items and things like that. So you're kind of encouraged to at least sort of have the rough approximation of friendship with them. Even if you don't want to do it, the game actively encourages you to do it. But the way that system is built is based primarily, first of all, on a monetary sort of like capitalist, like, the friendship is the most heavily weighted towards physical gifts. So, and literally, it is literally based on how expensive the gift you are giving them is. So, that's not an exaggeration. That is literally the factor. The more expensive the gift, the more friendship you will get with a person. So that, I don't think we need to go over my feelings on capitalism. But what that does is that it encourages the player to sort of think of these characters as, oh, well, it's just a monetary transaction. And then what happens is the unintended consequence of, well, they're friends, so obviously they're going to keep the thing you gave them, so they put it in their house. But then what happens is that their house becomes cluttered with a bunch of junk because you're just buying whatever junk is most expensive and giving it to them because you want to be friends with them. And then people, because their game is so heavily emphasized in the aesthetics of it, and the aesthetics of having all the cute villagers and having the cute designs and making little cafes on the outside on your beach or whatever, because the aesthetics of the villager's house become undesirable because it's just a cluttered mess of nonsense, like truly could only be worse if it was Billy's default house, which is literally a pile of trash. By the way, people complaining about the default houses of their villagers, and then literally Billy's house is like the trash heap pile floor and the trash heap pile wall, and all of this stuff is made out of cardboard. Don't complain. Billy's house is literally trash.
It's great.
But like, because the inside of the house becomes aesthetically unpleasing, it encourages players who are focused on aesthetics, which, to reiterate, the mechanics of the game are actively made to encourage players towards aesthetics. Like, you see that even in the fact that there is a built-in camera function. It's about taking pictures. It's about the aesthetics of it. And when the houses become aesthetically unpleasing, it encourages the player, well, now I got to get rid of them. Now I got to move them out and then, I don't know, replace them or move them back in so that there's someone with an actually good-looking house comes. And it completely takes, like, this sort of the humanness, the characterness, like the fact that this villager is a villager, and dehumanizes them and makes them literally a cardboard cutout that is meant to just look nice in the aesthetics of your perfectly aesthetically built town. And I know it sounds a little calm down. Sorry, I had to try 3 times to say that without swearing. Of me to like be like, I am really personally uncomfortable with the ethics of dehumanizing and shipping around fictional characters for the sake of aesthetics as if they were not actually people. But the older I get, the more uncomfortable I personally feel with things like that. Like, and not just in an issue of I prefer it to be a social sim. It's that I don't like the idea of actively encouraging in games treating people as not people. And it really does make me uncomfortable. And I know that seems a little extreme, but like, that's kind of how I feel. And it's one of the reasons I really don't like it. It's one of the reasons I don't like to listen to people talking about, well, oh, I'm trying to get my dream villager and this and this and that and that. Or like, I'm going to go on Nookazon and like see what I got to trade to get whoever. And because we shouldn't trade people. And it's this
hot,
sort of
hot take from Raschelle there.
People should be considered people and not commodities. And I don't think that was intentional. I really genuinely don't. But it's sort of the unintended consequence of a combination of changes to different aspects of the game that have created this ethical quandary for me. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
Speaking of not treating people like people, can we talk a minute about the NPCs in this characters, the good and the bad? Because a lot of previous characters are literal not people anymore. They've been replaced by signs and menus. So I want to talk about this because we've been talking about villagers and you know, that's a core aspect, but the NPCs, the standard ones in every game, the shop owners and whatnot, they're a big part of Animal Crossing. They're kind of the faces, since they're the ones that everyone sees. There was a mixed bag because they did some really great ones and some really not great ones. Let's see here. So a lot of the new ones were really good. Flick, CJ, Daisy May, they're all great. A lot of the existing ones, I like what they did. For instance, KK Slider, he's back to just being Saturday Night Guitar Dog like he was in the original game, which is very, very cool.
KK has returned to his roots, and I love it because I'm a big fan of KK and his "screw the man, here's a free album" attitude.
Yep. And they even did, when you start the game in New Horizons, KK speaks to you for a minute in a very, very clear homage to the original game's opening, which is a very nice touch.
Which, if I can make a very quick side note, kind of ties into why I feel weird about the degree of discrepancy between the history of the series and New Horizons, because they very clearly intentionally tried to put in references and homages to the previous series, and it feels weird to be getting these homages to previous characters and to previous experiences while simultaneously experiencing something so drastically different.
Yep.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, let's see. Gulliver. Gulliver's back to just being the sailor who's on the beach like he was in the original, which is great. I love Gulliver. He's been through some crazy stuff. Al, you didn't play it, but he used to be abducted by aliens, and you'd have to shoot down the spaceship to free him.
Oh my gosh. Have you seen the Animal Crossing movie? I know this is a tangent, but there's a movie, and that's a thing in it. Aliens. It's great.
Yep.
It will Gulliver aliens. So.
Wow.
that was a truly wild world.
What a roller coaster.
Blathers.
Aliens is the theme of today.
Blathers is probably one of my favorite aspects of the game because the museum is like probably my favorite part of the game. It is just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
By far.
I will say this is the best museum Animal Crossing has ever done. Period.
Hands down. Like, yeah.
As someone who has played exactly one, I agree.
Yep. Yep. You know what? That's fair. That's good. And Blathers himself. So like Raschelle said, many of the characters were quote unquote nerfed, as I like to call it. Their personalities were flattened, reduced, whatever you want to say. But Blathers was one of the few who actually, they said, you know what, let's give him back, because he was very, very, very talkative, as his name implies in the original game. And they toned it down every time a little bit. In the last one, New Leaf specifically, they literally said he's been talking. Blathers said, people feel I talk too much, so I've been working on cutting it down. And all his information was on plaques as opposed to coming from him directly. In this one, though, they gave him back his factoids that you could just hear it if you want, or you cannot, which is great. I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, which, just sort of in terms of game design, another reason I feel kind of weird about stuff, because they're clearly capable of finding an in-between between these two sort of things. Like, they did it with Blathers. Some people really like to hear Blathers talk. Some people are horrible people who don't. I'm sorry, Blathers is my favorite. And I think you should listen to everything he says. He's a good. But they gave the player the option. What way do you want to interact with this character? Do you want to hear all the ranting, or do you not want to do it at all? And I wish they had done that in more aspects of the game, because, like...
Oh, absolutely. I have that as a whole topic I was going to get to.
Well, go at it.
Yeah, that's one of the big problems. Options. Well, first, let me just wrap up with the NPCs, because what I said originally, a lot of them, so these were the great ones. They come back to 4, more or less. But then you have the opposite, where some characters were flat out wiped and replaced with menus. The post office, one of the most important institutions, I'd say, in all the previous Animal Crossings, is now just a little card stand in the airport, killing like 3 NPCs at once.
I miss Pelly.
Oh, they're great. I miss Pete. Pete was great.
I miss Phyllis. I saw Phyllis a lot because I worked night.
Let's see who else was replaced. Wendell, he might be brought back, I don't know, but he was replaced by just menus in the latest Dream Suite update, or a board, I think it is. Luna, the Dream Suite lady, as well. She doesn't have a place herself. She's just now get in your bed and see her for a brief moment. So that's unfortunate, which again this speaks to the whole overall theme. They did some great things and they did some not so great things I'm a fan of. And like I was saying early on, a lot of the new characters are pretty good though. A lot of successors, which I really like. Daisy May was a great successor.
I would die for Daisy May.
She's great. She's cute, and what's nice is they still acknowledge her grandmother. It's still So Jones, turnip market, stock market, whatever it's called. Nook's Cranny is back, the original name of the store, but now it's completely run by the Nooklings. That's pretty cool. CJ is Chip's son, who used to be the fish tourney guy, and now he visits you and gives you lots of money. Flick is cool. So, like I said, kind of a mixed bag in terms of NPCs. I do. Al, you got any thoughts on the NPCs?
I like Celeste. Celeste is good.
I also
Celeste,
like
she's one who's gone. She's gone back to her roots a bit because she used to be the constellation lady. You talk to her and she draws stars for you, stuff in the stars for you. And now she's just stargazing.
I was gonna say, nice. I miss drawing constellations in the sky.
Well, I saw somebody do it.
I'm surprised they
with
haven't
fireworks.
Done that.
Okay, but that's fireworks,
No,
not literal
I
constellations
was
in the
just
sky.
saying, I thought it was cool, right? They made.
Okay, but imagine if instead of just one time when a firework goes off, every single night as the stars rotate as the night passes, you see this constellations rotating in the sky.
Sounds great. No, but so I found out something interesting that apparently,
yes,
at some point in one of the games, Celeste, somebody mentions that Celeste can't fly, and that's why she likes the stars so much.
Yeah, which
I didn't know that.
So, like, I think this kind of goes down. This is another thing that boils down to, like, this is a weird unintended consequence of the shift of focus from the sort of social aspect of it to just being more of a plug and play customizable island builder sim. Because there's kind of a slow trend of, like, the flattening or taking out of NPCs as a form of story, if that makes any sense. So there's never been a lot of story in any of the games, but you got a sort of sense of story from the NPCs and their personalities and the things they would do, like, especially if you consider the entire series as a whole, like, so, like, Tortimer used to be the mayor in the original, and he had a kind of a personality, and he said lots of things, and he'd go and do morning aerobics sometime. I miss aerobics. That's the one, if they brought that back, everything else would be forgiven. That's not true, but I would like to believe it would be true. And then he sort of has this story over the series of, well, he was the mayor, and then he decided to not be the mayor, and then he retired, and then he still had, like, a sort of personality and a function, except that he was retired now, and it was fun to see him. And a lot of that is kind of taken out of this game. Like, you see it primarily in Daisy May and CJ and Flick, where it's the story is the continuation, the passing on of the job to another character. But that kind of comes at the cost of completely cutting like 2/3 of the rest of the NPCs. So even though there is sort of like a progression of the story and progression of the character aspect of the game, it's definitely nerfed and there's definitely less of it. And that's because that is less of a focus of the game now. Who cares about the story of these NPCs? The player needs to be able to catch whatever they want, and God forbid the villagers are allowed to own their own bugs or something. You know what I mean? Like it's a consequence of the shift of focus. Did that make any sense?
Yeah, I got you. To go back to shift gears again here to a point that I alluded to, I think something that should be said across the board for as much complaining and grumbling we've been doing is that there are ways to circumnavigate at least a lot of these issues. There can be options you don't have to fundamentally change the game. Like, when a villager moves in, we could probably just, if they'd offer an option to just randomly select a location, that'd be nice. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big part of all this. For a game that presents itself to customizing and DIYing and reshaping, in some areas it's lacking a lot of options. Like they talked about the variety of things. How you achieve a 5-star island is pretty one way of doing it. You can't do it through nature, through natural means. You have to put a bunch of DIYs and furniture outside. So that's unfortunate. Speaking of nature, just a quick aside. Flowers. Why'd they mess up flowers so bad? Al, has your town been consumed by flowers?
Well, no. No, it hasn't.
Because mine has. It's a battle I can't win.
And we all know Raschelle's has.
Yeah.
I gave up. I live on Flower Island now. It's weird to have something that used to be like this sort of like, to have this like obscure mechanic that was essentially there as a reward for hardcore players to become mechanically like so much of a punishment on the player. It's very stressful.
Yeah, it's really weird that you have to actively work to keep it down. Let's see. There's still so much we could say. Nook Miles Island, the Mystery Tour Island. I'm looking down a list of stuff I had jotted down.
I mean, they all kind of come down to the same thing, though, right? Which we've been saying now for over an hour, right? Like there's much that has kind of removed, while adding choice, also removing choice in different ways. And changing how the game has worked over years, which, is good for some people, bad for others. And I guess we all hate the game now, right?
Yep. Should we end it on a positive note? Talk about some stuff we liked?
Yes.
Like, unequivocally.
I will say, I don't hate this game. I think this is a good game. I think it is a well-designed game that is fun to play for what it is. It's just that I personally don't enjoy it. And for me, it actually very much boils down to a lot of the ethical things, like with the villagers and with the intense capitalism and commodification of literally everything that just make it not fun for me anymore. But it is a good game, and it's well designed, and it's really pretty, and I kind of really enjoyed taking pictures because I enjoy taking pictures in every game that lets me take pictures. And I don't think people are bad or shouldn't enjoy it because I don't enjoy it or anything. I want to make that clear. Like, a lot of people really love it, and I'm glad a lot of people really love it.
I think it's also important to note that it's getting better. The updates have been pretty consistent so far, and they've all been pretty good. Like, I think the only one that got any backlash was the Bunny Day stuff, but I mean, even I didn't mind it that much. But aside from that,
I think the only issue people had was just how long it was.
I think.
I'm fine. Yep.
I don't understand why people were mad about getting all those eggs. Those were great. Like, you could eat those and use them to move trees.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited about see what other updates. I'm a little concerned because I don't want Bunny Day to be a template where and I feel like this is going to be the case where all the holidays are now going to be DIY focused. I could see how they could do that. I'm not sure if I want that, but we'll see. Like I said, the updates have been pretty good. They're feeling good.
If you could add one thing to the game, what would it be?
Gyroids. I want gyroids back. Desperately. I don't know. That's just off the top of my head. Like, not talking about a fundamental design change sort of thing.
Yeah.
Probably just that. Just gyroids. I guess the cafe. And spoilers that there's been lots of rumors that there's leftover code of gyroids in the cafe. So it probably will be coming. I could see it coming. I just like to have it now. I like the musical for players new to New Horizons. Gyroids are little figures based off. God, what is it? Hinawa, I think, Japanese. I'm not sure. I'm not qualified to say this, but they're based off some Japanese reference culture thing, and they're little figures that make cute little sounds, and they come in all sorts of colors, shapes, and sizes, and have funny names. And in a game where that's so heavily based on designing and making your perfect little thing, the audio part of it is missing, because you can make a nice little room, and adding a gyro with the right sound is always a really nice touch.
If I could add something to this game, just could kind of piggyback off of the holiday concerns, I want the little dumb, inconsequential kind of holidays to come back. Like, I want Halloween to be about putting on different masks to scare your villagers. And I want to have, like, the la-di-da-da day. That was a musical song. But, sorry.
That's why this is the Reprise.
Yep. But there used to be, like, a day where, like, you could just talk to villagers and they'd be like, here's a suggestion for a town tune. Everybody's going to come up with some songs today. And little things like that. Not just because, like, they add more in a sort of like social sim aspect, but because it's also variety within the gameplay loop. Because I think kind of something I want to make sure I point out that hasn't necessarily been pointed out is that the way that things are flattened makes the game a little boring to play, because there's less diversity in the ways that you can play it. And being able to have like a day where, oh, all of a sudden something is different and it's something new I can do in my town, that doesn't have to be a big thing with like a lot of goals you have to hit and it's stressful, like a bug off or like bunny day or whatever, adds a lot to the gameplay and a lot to making it feel more human and a lot to just making it better in general. And I would like to see more of that. Like, there's a reason I kind of get obsessed with really dumb little things like morning aerobics, and it's because it adds diversity to what you can do and also everything else. It's just good. It makes the game more fun. And I want more of that.
What about you, Al? What would you add?
I think the problem is that what I'm going to add is probably not something that would be massively interesting to huge amounts of people, but I would like more farming type things. Not just because this is the harvest season podcast about farming games, but also like I liked I like the flowers and I like growing the fruit, but I feel like there's too much in the flowers, in so much as I'm so bored trying to get a blue rose. But other than that particular one, there's not enough in terms of plants, I think, and it'd be good to grow other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know, if we're talking about things that the code hints at, then that is also something that the code hints at. So I'm excited about that.
I will say, on a positive, I am very willing to wait to see what they do. Like, they've been doing a good job with the updates and stuff. And part of the thing about Animal Crossing is that it's a very sort of long-term investment kind of a game, or at least it has been in the past. And not just in terms of this is a game you're supposed to play for a long time, for hundreds of hours, but also in terms of, like, for example, the first update to New Leaf was years and years and years into the game's existence, and it was this huge big update that completely revitalized the game and breathed new life into it. And so I kind of have this expectation that as time passes, they're going to be adding more to it, and it's going to balance things out better and make it more appealing to me. So I have a lot of hope for that. I'm excited about the potential in future updates.
Yeah.
So.
Like I said, I agreed with that. The updates have been consistent and pretty good. And and like you said, the Welcome Amiibo update was pretty significant. I think they're willing to do that, especially with how much money they've been making. I'm sure they're going to be willing to invest to keep the Animal Crossing train going. Yeah.
So in terms of, and just because it's interesting looking at the dates of them. So yeah, they've been quite a lot, and you know, we're not even 6 months in.
Nope.
We've had 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and presumably the fall update will come before Halloween. So presumably end of September, beginning of October. So that'll be like 7 months, and there have been 4 major updates.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm confused. We hate this game. We like this game. Yes, and both, and neither at the same time.
Yes, to all that.
We have mixed feelings on the game.
Mixed feelings. We like what we like, and we don't like what we don't like. Oh.
Is there
This game
anything
is
else
eating
in
too much of my
particular that
time.
people want to bring up, or are we good?
Big stuff. Where's you know what I'm? Yeah, I guess so. I miss multiplayer games. Bring that back. Bring back mini games.
That's your final word on it, Kevin, is it?
I miss the mini games.
I think that might be a feature that Al never got to in New Leaf.
I literally got to none of the features in that game.
Which I feel is so weird because like there's so much of New Horizons that is specifically designed to encourage you to interact with other players, primarily in the form of getting different colors of different things.
Yep.
But the island tours in New Horizon, I think I just said New Leaf. In the last game, the island tours in the last game were exactly that, but they specifically encouraged you to have a sort of social function with other players as opposed to a transactional one, where you just went and you played games together. And yes, there was a reward, which yes, you could trade for certain items, but the primary function of it was to play a game with other people. Anyway, so my final thought is that I really enjoy clamming, actually. I know a lot of people don't like clamming in this game because it's kind of a stupid, dumb, boring task. But like, when I was
What's your
playing,
favorite
I found
flavor?
clamming to be vanilla. And that's my final thought on Animal Crossing, is that I actually really enjoyed clamming. So.
So.
This is exactly how I wanted this podcast to end. I promised either the absolute best or the absolute worst.
In like 36 hours.
I feel like this is the first game that we've properly covered on the podcast that we have neither really liked or really disliked. And I think that's interesting.
I do too. It's not often I feel aggressively middling about something.
Yeah.
So that's Animal Crossing. Maybe we'll do an update in another 6 months. We'll see if I hate it still. If you would like to tweet me your opinions about the character Owen Landis in Zombies Run, at Miss Delaney. Delaney has 2 L's.
If you would like to, I don't even know. If you want to tell me that you're also excited about farming coming to Animal Crossing, maybe you can tweet at me the Scottbot with Scott only having 1 T. Kevin, where can they find you on the internet?
If you want to tell me how much you also miss gyroids, you can tweet me at KoopaPrez on Twitter for my personal account, where I'll be mostly retweeting voice actors and things like that. Or if you want to commission putting my Flitcat on
do
here,
it.
You can tweet me at Spriter Squared. That is again at Spriter Squared, where that's my art account where I put lots of pixelated images and things like that, and I do commissions. I've meant to do one for this special occasion of the harvest season, but I didn't expect 50-hour work weeks, so I'll get to that.
Yeah, understandable. If you'd like to contact the podcast in general, you can tweet at us at THS Pod. That's for the harvest season, THS Pod for podcast. Or you can email us at our website, harvestseason.club.
You should send them money on their Patreon, where you can get access to special content, like a bonus podcast called The Greenhouse, in which we will discuss musicals.
Shrek the Musical. We're going to talk about Shrek the Musical, and you should pay us to do it.
Shrek.
Can we talk? Musical. Wait. Can we talk about the Spider-Man one? Turn Off the Dark. Are you guys familiar with that?
No, right. No,
we're going to talk about the Shrek musical and the Spider-Man musical and the Pokemon musical. Please give us money.
That actually happened. I forgot about that. That happened.
Right. Kevin, you realize we've already recorded this episode, right?
I know. Yeah. I'm enticing the listeners
with lies.
If we get enough patrons, I promise to do an entire episode on Shrek and Spider-Man and Pokemon the musical.
Do we need to add that in as an official tier?
We on bad musicals, but no, there are some good discussions. There was much laughter actually, some sick burns. Come learn why musicals are only about aliens or death. These are the only two categories.
Oh dear.
Sometimes
all right,
both.
I think we sold it well. Sometimes both.
You know, we've not finished this yet. Can we finish this podcast?
We've sold this really well. All of that being said, listeners, I'm exhausted. So until next time, listeners,
have a good harvest.
Have a good fruit tree shake and get your oranges or coconuts. Animal Crossing.
The Harvest Season is created by Raschelle Delaney and Al McKinley, with support from our pro farmer level patrons, Kevin and Stuart. Our art is done by Micah the Brave, and our music is done by Nick Burgess. Feel free to visit our website, harvestseason.club, for show notes and links to things we discussed in this episode. Thanks for listening.
Call it Animal Crossing Reprise in parentheses.
Yes, we're doing it. Perfect.
But we've already done like two of them.
Nope. It's the musical episode.
It's not going to make sense to anyone yet.
It's going to be great. Don't worry about it.
Ugh. If you want to tell me why... Oh, I'm trying to think of a really early callback. Oh yeah, if you want to tell me why I'm bad for having not watched Coco yet, you can tweet at me at the ScottBot. Scott has only one T.
I lied. I want to change mine.
I'm tweeting Al right now.
Al, why have you not watched Coco? It's a great movie.
Because it's only been about 2 hours since we talked about that. And of course, no, that's a callback to the greenhouse. The greenhouse, which they're not going to have listened to yet. That's not coming out for a week.